Welcome to the Sisterhood of Sweat. I am here today with Rachelle McCloud. Rachelle McCloud, LCSW, is a mental health therapist and emotional wellness. Through years of successfully helping clients move through anxiety, depression, and trauma disorders into remission, she has developed a program that empowers people to skillfully get rid of symptoms and heal. She is also the facilitator of the Facebook group Releasing the Baggage of Anxiety, Depression, and Traumatic Stress, where she delivers free training on leading interventions that work well for getting rid of symptoms, not just coping or managing them. Her mission is to empower people to do their own healing work effectively, safely, and skillfully. And today was quite an emotional episode. It was so unexpected, and I really got vulnerable. I told a story I've never ever told before. And I think that many of you will learn. I always learn when I'm hearing other people's stories and see parts of myself. So I hope today's episode really helps anybody that has had trauma or just things that are in the back of their brain that cause triggers today or that are painful from childhood, things, anxiety, any type of stress. Today, Rachelle was all about helping us to rewire our brain so it works for us, so we can thrive instead of just being survival mode, and just be fully, authentically the best versions of ourselves. And so without further ado, we will dive into this episode. I might bring the tissues. I know I needed them today, and it was so unexpected. So without further ado, let's dive in. Hey, everybody. I am excited. We're going to have a powerful conversation today. I want to welcome Rachelle McCloud to the Sisterhood of Sweat. Welcome.
Thank you. It's great to be here.
Yeah, we've been having a great conversation before the show begins. The show is actually the pre-show. And Rachelle has the insight. She has the 411. She knows how to help us as women to be more empowered, more confident, more assured of herself. And she helps people release their baggage of anxiety, depression, and traumatic stress. So I thought that sounded like a win-win. So Rachelle, take it away and tell us a little bit about yourself.
Yeah, I've been really learning about the brain from the inside out. I had an anxiety, depression, and traumatic stress disorder, and really needed to find some ways to really heal. And what I learned in this journey is that our brain is designed to heal us and to help us grow, to help us expand our ways of being, to update them. And what I found along that is that all of us already have the confidence, the knowing, the drive, the motivation within us, but it can get covered up by trauma. I never am in a place where I have to be like, okay, we need to rebuild someone's confidence. No, we need to get the gunk off of it. And then as soon as you start to take that stuff off, it just starts pumping through and moving through, and you're winning when it starts to come through on the first time and the second time, and the next thing we've uncovered that, and people can really effortlessly, without a ton of affirmations or willpower, be themselves and be their confident self. And so any of that stuff where we're not able to be confident, it's always a snag somewhere in the brain's inability to release the confidence that we have. It's like inner conflict can do that. Old emotion, I'm excited about this, but I'm worried about that. That's the kind of stuff that really holds our confidence back and our standing in our power. And because our brain, it's like, I want to help you with that, but what will happen if this person says that? What will we do with that? I don't know, And so it's stuck in that spinning place where you're like, but I want to move forward. And it's like, I know. And it just tries even more, actually, which is why we get circling thoughts and racing thoughts, and we freeze in moments. And that's a sign that the brain is really stuck with helping you create the thoughts and movement forward, right? It's doing all of that for us all the time. And so if we're having these issues with confidence, or not reaching our goals, having strong desires for our goals, but we can't reach them, it's always because our brain is not able to help us for whatever reason. And sometimes that's generational. We've been conditioned and programmed by past generations, and our brain isn't able to get in there and loosen that up so that we can hold the values and the beliefs, but in a new way for us that's more flexible for who we are and the times that we live in. Right. And so, but we see all these little glitches and we feel like maybe there's something wrong with us, or maybe I'm not confident enough. And it's just because the brain isn't able to do what it's stuck in its process of upgrading and growing and transformation. And it's actually the one little spot that the brain gets stuck with. And it's not a problem with our thinking center. It's actually it's inner conflict with the survival system, part of our brain.
Oh, flight and fright.
That's right. That's right. That's right. And so if we can work with that survival system, which is very, very easy, we can engage it and pull it out of the process. And all of a sudden the brain can do all the upgrading it wants to do. But because we typically will use strategies that engage our thinking center, like reading and listening to podcasts, which I'm not saying we shouldn't do that because it's fun, but talk therapies, chatting with our girlfriends, venting, like those things are really prefrontal cortex activities. They're thinking center activities, and our survival system doesn't care. That's not its native language. It's not really paying attention to us. So it's like, you go ahead, talk. I'm just going to go here and defend us and do the, make sure, and it's really trying its best, but it's not firing accurately. And so it can really block the healing process. And so when we, instead of engaging our thinking center with all these ways, when we shift that and we start working with the survival system, all of a sudden we just start noticing our brain is working better. And all of a sudden we're starting to, I have clients that will tell me, I said no. I never would have said no before, but I just knew it wasn't the right thing for me. And so I said no. And they're like, that's so strange. I've never said no, and then it's like, so we can start to do the things that are more authentic to us and are so helpful. And what's really funny is that lots of us feel like the world's going to end if we say no. Right? We just feel like something bad will happen. I mean, I was taught never say no in many thousands of ways, but all of a sudden people are saying no, and we're being who we are. We know what our needs are, and we're expressing them, or we're maintaining boundaries for ourselves. And we say, we'll put one out there, and all of a sudden it's like the whole world around us like exhales, or like just, it's like there's just something beautiful and healing and corrective about a woman who can be who she is.
Oh, yes.
And that's really what we want our brains to do, is help us be who we are.
So I want to back up.
Split up. Yes.
Go ahead. You are hitting the nails on the head. But I want to back up just a little before I ask the next question. But conditioning, many of us have been through conditioning from childhood on up of what a good girl is. And we all want to be a good girl, which means we may be people pleasing to a degree and not even recognize it, and unable to say no, and unable to set boundaries, which is what we believe, which isn't even true. And so we're kind of stuck in that pattern. And I want to help some people today to break out of that and have some tools for this conditioning of, like, when we're deciding upon something that we innately want to do, but yet we're in our brain thinking, oh gosh, what will the church choir think? I don't know. I just pulled that out of my hat. What will my husband think? What will my friends think? and we're leaving ourselves out of that equation. It's all about everyone else, and we're not getting centered on what it is we actually want deep down inside, and giving ourselves the permission that our own wants, needs, and desires are enough.
Right. Yeah. Oh gosh, I could go on and on about that. Um, I want to tackle that from, I think it's really important that we understand a little bit about development and how we develop as humans. When we are born, we come out and we are selfish to the core. We the only thing we know and understand is self and the information we're giving. I'm hungry, my diaper's wet, I'm too far away from mom, I'm too close to this person I don't know. Like, we are responding based on our internal stimulation, our internal communication, and that is awesome. And that is something we never want to interrupt. And what happens is that as we develop as children, and as we have children and we are developing them, we want to make sure they are solidly connected to themselves. We want to make sure we're touching them, we're playing with their little toes, we're actually connecting their nervous system. And we are smiling at them, we're making eye contact, we're hooking them up, and we're actually telling them the world looks at you. And this is such an important thing, and that we're listening to you and responding to you. Right. And this is why child development is so important. And then we have this child, ideally, who is very well hooked up to themselves and can understand themselves, and they can start talking and saying, I have to go to the bathroom. Right. So they're communicating their needs and we're responding. And so they're learning that, hey, if I put my needs out there, the world comes around and supports me. Now, what we want to do as parents is we want to take that understanding, we want to start stretching it out so that they can start understanding the world outside of them as well. Right. And we want them to start holding two ideas together. This is your perspective. You understand this. This is my perspective. How do we come together here and make something? Right. And so we're stretching them, and we're stretching them into empathy. We're stretching them into compassion. We're stretching them into the front of the brain, which is where we can hold multiple perspectives. The back of the brain, you only get one perspective, and that's yours. You're the only thing that matters in the back of your brain. Up in the front of the brain, you can hold multiple perspectives, and we're training them to use that part of the brain. What happens so often, especially with women, but this happens with men as well, is that we will disconnect them with the self, and we will have women, we want you to understand everybody else outside of you. And that's what's important. And this, there's so many survival things involved with this, and trauma, and just the development of hunting and gathering and whatever, right? Most of that is not how we're living presently, but it's in the conditioning. And so when we, especially if we have early childhood trauma where we had to be the parent, or we had to take care of the parent, or a parent was mentally ill, and we didn't get to spend that time inside of ourselves, learning how we are, what we know, what we need, what we want, that good self-connection, right? We'll overdevelop the empathy and the compassion, and we'll lose sight of the internal information we're receiving. And then because in our culture, we have this thing about don't be selfish. You do not want to be caught with the selfish stick in your hand, And so it's like, no, I wasn't, it's not about me. It's just that this would help the whole group better, And so we're training ourselves and our younger children, our girls. A lot of time men are socialized the other way, where they're more self, but they're not, right? That's a whole nother topic. I'm going to stay focused here, but we have so many reasons why, and that you don't want to appear selfish. And that right there sets us up for a lot of challenges, because we'll have a high level of empathy and multiple perspective holding and all these things, in a low level of self-centeredness, where we cannot gather the information from within ourselves. And so, but what we want is, like in childhood, you're born like this, selfish, and then you got a low level of empathy. We want you to build this empathy up at a really high level, where you have both really high levels of self-centeredness, where you are getting all of that information, you matter to yourself, you got yourselves back, and also you can hold the perspective of other people, because when you have those two skills very high, now you can create win-win scenarios, because you know what your win is. And then you can in interactions, what's your win? what would be great here, and you have two different wins, now you have the opportunity to create something, collaboration, and create a synergistic situation and solution and outcome that's a win-win for everybody. But if you're coming to the table and you don't know what your win is, and we're going out here and you're saying, what's going, this is what we want to do, we want to have family dinners every night, right? Okay, so that's the win, but you don't know what your win, you don't know that your win is you want to make it to the gym, you want to do your inner healing work, you want to do this stuff, you don't know that stuff, so you can create plans that don't include your win, and so you're blocked, you can't meet your own needs, your system is thriving and you're not thriving, you're depleting.
What about when women have needs that their partner doesn't understand, or vice versa, when if they're with a male partner and or like a husband-wife scenario, and the wife doesn't understand the husband's need to have beers with the buddies and golf every weekend, or vice versa, the husband doesn't understand the wife's need to go socialize with her girlfriends and go to a party, whatever it is. What is the couple to do when one partner is like, I absolutely don't want you doing that, and the partner feels like you cut off their right arm because it's such a need? How can we help the couple create a win there when one partner is so adamant, no, 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 and the other partner is like, oh my gosh, you're asking me that? How can you ask? That's like a deal breaker.
Yeah. I'm just, okay, so I'm not a marriage therapist or counselor, couples, nothing, right? And I literally could set your whole marriage on fire. So I really come from a perspective of brain function. And so, what our brains need to be able to shift and create change is to find emotion that comes up from the back of the brain and from the body, right? And make sure that emotion gets to the front of the brain. A lot of times what happens is the emotion and sensations coming up, and because the survival system is like, this is dangerous, this is because it can register as pain. It can fire off the pain centers in the body, which will activate your survival system to get you out of pain. Instantly, you don't have a choice about that. So if you have an emotion of distress that is happening because someone said you can't do that, or I don't want you to, and it gets too high enough, your brain will actually shut that down, and you will not be able to move that through the process of growth and integration and really creating something in your life with it. Right. So the very first thing is that we want to take this process and make sure it gets through the brain. And so really great tools for that are interventions that will work with the survival system to say, hey, we're okay, we can let healing happen. I imagine we're grabbing the survival system and we're rocking it like a baby. It's like it responds to anything that a baby would respond to, because that's really the system that's highly developed in babies, right? And it never goes away. It never changes. It's just like that. And so, but there's interventions like emotional freedom techniques, which is a tapping intervention. You're using the body's and energy. You're using the acupressure points. You can tap on them, and you're speaking to your survival system in its native language, the body, because it's hooking up to your body and it's watching your body all the time. And we are already doing this kind of work with our brain, because we will engage our body in hot baths, blankets, sex, eating, drugs, alcohol, like it positive or negative, you engage the body, you're engaging the survival system, and we intuitively know that. But there's some interventions that work specifically with it that don't have the negative side effects and that are much faster. And so emotional freedom techniques is one of them. Thought-filled therapy is another one. I love energy medicine interventions and eye movement desensitization and reprocessing, which is an eye movement based EMDR. These ones work specifically with the survival system. And so in these moments, what's most important is that we get what's coming up from the back of the brain and get it to the front. Right. And so working with the survival system does that. And then really everything else unfolds from there, because if you're going to interact with your spouse from the back of your brain, you're only going to be selfish, because that's the only thing that your back of the brain cares about is yourself. You're not going to be able to see any other perspectives. And you're going to have a lot of emotion that hasn't been translated by the brain into thoughts and feelings and words and those sorts of things. And also that emotion is energy. And if we can't get it to the front of the brain, it is fueling and empowering the back of the brain, and you will be fueling survival activities and your animal brain, right? You'll be fueling survival activities, and that's fighting, flight, freeze, faint, fawn. And that fawning is that people pleasing that's happening automatically. And we're watching our mouth move and we're appeasing them. And then we leave the conversation like, why did I act like that? Well, you were in the back of the brain, and the back of the brain does that, and you don't get a choice over it. And that's why we want to keep couples and humans out of the back of the brain as much as possible. And especially when the survival system activates and shuts down that healing process, it actually also shuts down your thinking center. So you're actually only running on about 20% of your thinking ability, and that ability will be overridden and used by the survival system to create the survival responses that it wants created. So it is a very not empowering, and that part of the brain doesn't know how to thrive. So when we're all emotional and we can't get that emotion through our brain's healing process, we can't use it to thrive. We can't use it for problem solving and creativity and motivation, which is really what it is. When it stays in the back of the brain, it just is used for defending, for surviving. And that is it's like you're rolling the dice and maybe it will help us thrive, maybe it won't. And that's not really that's not the most empowering place to live from. And your life will look like that. It will look like there's that you've got some thriving, you've got some not thriving, you got some strategies going over here. And we want your life, we want to put your brain in thrive mode over all areas of your life, so that each aspect of your life can look like it fits you and it matches you and it helps you thrive. And your brain is responsible for that. And that's what it's here for. If there's areas that are not thriving and are where it's not going well, it likely the emotion isn't moving through, the situations aren't moving through your brain to get that upgrade. And I know this sounds techie and it sounds kind of nerdy and it sounds very processy, but I cannot tell you the liberation this gives people when they're able to actually use their brain in a very functional way.
So how do we get from the back of the brain to the front so that we are thriving, not just surviving, and we're able to be healthy and be thinking properly and not shutting down?
Yes. This is what I walk people through. So this is what you're asking me is very simple, but it can be complex. Literally, this situation with the husband says, I don't want you to go do that. And the wife feels crushed, right? So let's say we want her to use an intervention while she is focused on, this is crushing to me, and see how much information we can gather from herself, right? Because now we're reconnecting her from herself, with herself. And to heal anything, your brain needs to be able to attention it, bring it into awareness, and get it through the pathways, which we use an intervention to manually walk it through, especially because when you have complex childhood trauma or an anxiety, depression, or trauma disorder, those are happening because this process is not functioning. It's not functioning reliably, and it's definitely not functioning at the speed of your life. So it's kind of delayed in creating solutions and getting rid of symptoms. And the fact that you have symptoms of shutting down, procrastination, avoidance, that's a sign that your brain is not like, I can't do this, and so we're going to do this. Like, these behaviors are not that thriving stuff, that's the survival stuff. So we know that you're moving down the survival pathways and not the thriving ones. And so it's really about getting that emotion through and paying attention to them long enough. And I feel trapped, and a lot of times what we'll find there is we'll find early memories where someone said no and they really were powerless, and they didn't get the support to work that out. And so every time it happens in the future, your brain goes back to the past. It's like, I didn't know to figure it out there. How am I going to figure it out here? And your brain starts doing this, and you're like, but we need to talk to this person. And your brain is shut down and it's doing this. And it's just like, what we can do is we can go back to this memory and move that memory through the healing pathways using these interventions to make sure it gets fully through this time. And your brain actually, once it gets through, it starts looking at it and analyzing it and applying all the information you have gathered in it at present, right? Because then you might have been 6, you might have been 5, and you couldn't understand how the world worked or what was going on, but now you do. And when we pull that through, your brain is now able to analyze it and look at it and learn from it and strategize with it from all the skills you have now. And so all of a sudden it's like, oh, I know what we'll do. Simple. And then it starts writing these codes for it. And then it informs your survival system. When this happens from now on, we're not going to freeze or fight. We're going to do this. And the survival system says, okay, that looks reasonable. And the next thing you know, in real time, this thing that when your husband says, no, it's not freezing you, and you're actually able to just be present with it. I see that you're uncomfortable with this. Tell me more. Right? And you can unpack this. And now there's deeper communication happening in the relationship instead of just, I said no, which you would have gone for before because your nervous system was conditioned for that. When people say no, you're no longer powerful, you're done, game over. And now you don't believe that. Does that make sense?
It's making sense. And so I'll share something like that. It was, what would I say, traumatic in my childhood. My mom suffered from manic depression and she was suicidal. And I grew up with that all the way up into teen years. Some very, very, very traumatic incidents happened that have, I would say have scarred me. And so I look back and I can see myself, I can remember, I can see some of the ways it affected me. And one was, I learned early on, I wanted everyone to be happy around me. Okay.
Yes.
So because it's safety, right? If you're okay, I'm okay. And everything is okay. So I always want people to be happy around me. So I'm like a fixer, a rescuer. I think I survey the room. I'm empathic, and I see this in myself because I do my self-development.
Yeah.
But now that I recognize it, I'm kind of like, oh, so that's kind of like a protection mechanism. So how do I release myself of that a little bit and not feel like I have to be the fixer and make everyone happy around me?
Yeah. What's really cool about this is that I work with lots of people that have already done so much work. And they're like, why do I still have symptoms, or why am I still blocked in this area? And the truth of the matter is that we don't get to tell our brain when we've done enough work on something. Really, we want the brain to tell us if we've done enough work on something. And so what's happening is, in any situation where it's not going the way you want, you can grab that situation, and in there, you can follow that situation to the root, and it will tell you exactly which memory needs more work, which memory, which belief, because it can be a belief, it can be some old stuck emotion, it can be a memory, and it will tell you exactly which one that is. And right there, you kind of sit down with that memory and make sure it gets through the healing pathways. And there are strategies for this. This is something I teach people how to do in my program, because I feel like everybody should know this stuff. This is not just for therapists. Your brain is doing this everywhere you go. It's part of self-care 101 in my mind, right? And so you can really pick out the precise memory and help your brain finish it. And finish it by, I mean that by its standards. And we'll know that when there's no more pain in the memory, when your brain, you bring it to your brain to the memory, and it's it wanders off. It's I can't be bothered with that. And it's kind of like, oh, that was the big deal. Now it's not. You'll get that feedback from a memory that's done now. And that's not just, and will come forward in the present memory and the present situation where it's not going well. And it will feel different. You will have new insights on it just because we went back to that one memory. It unlocks you. And then if there's more problems in it, we will find that one problem because we keep looking at it. And then we can find the root of that. Which memory is that? So it's different than, there are some people that need to go and do a whole overhaul of you know, that especially if you've got an anxiety, depression, or trauma disorder, you need to overhaul. I mean, this, especially for however long you've had it, like this isn't working, right? And so we need to get all that stuff through. But a lot of times people have done a lot of that unpacking, and it's just, there's some things that are going on, and they need to have the tools to be able to grab it and go all the way back to the root of it and do very specific spot work. And your life will tell you where that is. And which is so cool, because you don't really have to guess. And it's just right there hidden in plain sight, but most of us aren't trained to look for it. And we don't know what's going on in our brain. And so, because we just haven't practiced, you know, we haven't had it pointed out to us. So we can really find the exact moments, the exact scenarios, the exact places where the memory is stored in the body. It's fascinating. The body is always telling the truth. It is always, but what the deal is that it's always speaking, the parts of your body and brain are always speaking from their native language. And that is not always the native language of the thinking center. Like, for instance, our body is always communicating, hey, I got this memory over here, but it could be a tightness in your stomach, right? So it's not going to write you a note that says, hey, there's this memory right here, and I'd love to help you make that phone call, but I'm blocked because I remember when this happened before, and I'm not doing that again. You know, it doesn't say that. It just, your stomach just starts clenching. And that is the problem. That is, it's the whole entire communication message. It's the whole letter. It's just in the native language of the body. And so when we can pay attention to that letter, the message, and use an intervention, we can get the brain to get in there and pull things out and heal it and resolve it and release that from your stomach. That way, when you go to make the phone call, your stomach isn't, that stuff isn't there anymore. So it's not clenching up and prevent, I'm going to throw up, I can't make this phone call, you know. It lets you do that, because now the stomach isn't sending distress messages up about the phone call, because it does. It's like, don't make us do this. And your survival system's like, I hear some distress coming from within us, you know, this is too much, we got to get away from that. Because the survival system responds the same way as grabbing a hot pot. It receives messages from the body, it overrides your system, and you drop the pot instantly, because it's holding your nervous system. It's typing in code, like, drop it instantly, right? And so if it's getting messages from your stomach, nausea, about, it doesn't know that, hey, we're fine. It's not a thinking center. It says, we're getting messages of pain, react now, go. And the next thing you know, it sent you all these messages of distraction. And instead of making that phone call, you just remember 3,000 of the other things you should be doing. You're off walking the other direction. You never, and that's your survival. It's creative, you know.
So it's like these painful triggers. Like, I
Yeah.
almost cried a second ago because you know, just letting that out brought so much up for me.
Yeah. Would you like to use an intervention? I know.
Hang on for a second. Okay, you guys, I just had a little bit of a meltdown for being vulnerable. You missed the whole thing, thank goodness. But Rachel is amazing. And so coming back from that, my question would be, since I got a little bit vulnerable about my mom, is when we're carrying some of the messaging from people, traumatic events, maybe our childhood, maybe a bad relationship, a toxic one, and we're carrying these messages in our brain, and it can't be released because we haven't processed through the trauma. How do we process that so that we can be healthier and not be triggered, because it's showing up because we didn't process it in all other areas of our life?
Yeah. You know, I think that, I think the first thing really is to realize that these messages are still affecting us. You know, I think many people are in denial of that. And because it's like, if we admit to that, it's like we did something wrong, but we didn't do something wrong. It's not that the brain has a specific process for releasing that stuff out of us. And if these things can't get through that process, it will not be released. And the situation, your system will respond inaccurately to similar situations in like, that's that thing, in those survival modes, and going, even though it's not, right? But because because those messages are in there and they haven't been fully brought through yet, the brain really can't decipher, because we don't get to use your thinking center about it. You only get to use your survival system about it, and your nervous system. And your nervous system is already like that. No, not that, right? And so these triggers that we have in our life, they're really beneficial to us, even though they're really painful, because they will lead us to the exact point our brain is having difficulty with, where our brain was not able to complete the work for us, where our brain is still running on an old program, even though we've got new programs running, that those two programs aren't compatible, right? And so we behave weirdly. We behave in like, why did I just fawn all over this person, right? Why did I just shut down, right? That's, those moments are, you know, what did my kid do that made me start yelling? You know, if you can find that, and sometimes you can, sometimes you can't, because remember, triggers are anything that enters our senses. So it could be a smell in the air, it could be a temperature, it could be a touch, it could be a sensation, it could be a sound, it could be anything. And it also can be something very obvious that you do exactly know what it is consciously. And so, but the deal is, all we need is to be able to pay attention to that trigger, and everything we need to know to heal is right there in that moment. And so, and that's really where I teach people lots of strategies to gather up that information, to make and escort that information through your brain's healing process. We don't want to just make, you know, assume we've got it identified and now we assume that it's made it through the process. No, we've got to make sure this gets past your survival system, because your survival system has already said, I'm not letting that through. And so that's where we just take a little extra time and make sure it all gets through, and then your brain will resolve that and that trigger will stop. And that's the thing, is that it's one thing for us to say that, oh, I got triggered, or that thing triggers me, or please don't do that because I'm triggered. But the truth of the matter is, we have the power to resolve triggers so that they no longer trigger us.
Man, I had such a deep revelation while you were talking that just really connected some things for me. Is because of what we said when we were off air. And it also goes to one of the questions that I saw on your one sheet. Why do so many people who are the strong ones in their relationship have a difficult time overcoming, you know, patterns? And I have always been like the strong one, the one that doesn't want to show people if I have a problem, or if, you know, I don't go around miserable. I find a way to make it positive. But I was thinking about this whole good girl scenario that we were talking about. And I realized that growing up, I was taught to be the good girl, the strong girl. You know, no matter what was going on in our household, I had to pretend that everything was fine and good, and, you know, the perfect picture. And I'm still doing this, I think, in adulthood in some ways. I mean, I think I do. I can't help it. I mean, it's just like there, but just being really vulnerable here. I was about 14, 15, you know, around the dating age, and my mom had an episode, and I came home from school and I wasn't allowed to come in the house because it was a horrible scene where she had tried to kill herself. And you know, it was bloody. There were razor blades. I hate, you know, we may have to like censor this, but there was, you know, the blow dryer that wasn't good enough in the tub, the pills, everything. And it didn't make sense to my brain when I was little. It didn't make sense to my brain then. You know, I didn't understand depression. I didn't understand what was so wrong that my mom, you know, would do that, which kind of causes you to internalize. And my dad, of course, was trying to cope with the whole situation. And he wanted me to go on like nothing had happened, and to go to my friends that night, spend the night. And I think that I have went on ever since. that same way, like nothing had happened.
Yes. Yes, absolutely. I feel for you. I mean, just, and I think in these moments, right, this is such a painful thing. And it's the power comes when we can tune into all that pain and get it through. But I also find that just like a dentist, right? You don't want to go to the dentist and get work done without any numbing, so without any interventions to block the pain or resolve the pain first. And the dentist will numb that and then do the work. And that's a lot of the interventions. When you find the right match for you, they do that. And they can allow us to do some really painful, deep work without a lot of pain. And so that the brain, because your brain, in order to understand that, it needs to get all the way in there and look at it. And if it comes this close and your brain is already like, no, it's too painful, never go there. Like, right, it's too far outside. It can't get in there and understand it, make sense of it. That's its job. And it never stops with its job. So it's always, it'll bring it up. It'll flash. That's what flashbacks are made of, is that I want to see that again. I want to get in there again. There's things in there I need. And you're like, just leave it alone. No. And so you've got this war. But really, if we can give the brain what it wants, it will then give us what we want, because it's on our team. And it's like, I'm trying to help you, but I can't do what I'm supposed to do. And so a lot of times when we find the right intervention for us, and there are many, and not all are the right fit for each other, for different people, we can start working through the pain levels out here, right? And then as that numbs out, and what happens is that the brain will grab that and pull that through the healing process. And so even just that work is really powerful, because the brain is able to convert all of this stuff. I don't even know what it is, chemicals, memories, emotion, like it'll be able to convert this stuff into stuff that's actually usable and functional for us. And if it's not, it's smart enough, it'll just release it, because the brain has a elimination system, just like our physical body does. You hit the large intestines and you're out soon, and but if stuff gets stuck in the stomach, it will cause problems in our life, right? Everything needs to move through. It needs to go through the small intestine, which is when our body is picking through nutrients. I want this one, I don't want this one, I want this one, right? And our brain does that too. And then it moves into the large intestine and it's out. We're done with it. And you don't eat the same food twice. And the brain is like that too. We don't have to do the same work. Once this work is done, it's really done. And then you can get closer, and then there's pain right here. And you don't just run in here, because your survival system will be so angry. It's like, I put that there so you wouldn't get there. So we're working with the survival system to work through this layer, and then this layer, and then this layer, not numbing it, but it will feel like numbing it, but it's not. It's actually processing it in a very painless way, or as painlessly as possible. And then pretty soon we'll be here, and then the brain can get in there, and it starts understanding stuff like the beliefs that we picked up, the things we internalized. And then as it understands this, it's like, oh, I thought it was because of this. It's not because of this. And it'll start to break associations that you have, like that were wrong and incorrect. Like the association with I'm unlovable, right? I'm not worth it.
Right.
I don't make life, I'm not enough, right? And we pick that up. And so as the brain understands this, it's like, hey, hold up, that's not accurate. And it will start breaking those associations, which is wonderful, because now these are free to hook up in totally different ways, and your brain can do that work. And so now this thing, and the brain is, I doing this, I have helped people process the most awful traumas that one doesn't even want to acknowledge it happened on the earth. But what happens every time, and in the beginning when I started doing this, I was like, I don't know if you're ever gonna heal from this. But I don't say that, right? Because I'm like, let's do this.
It's like when somebody comes to me and says they want to be a supermodel, and they're like 65, and I'm like, well, I'm very positive and optimistic, but that's a stretch, And then I give them the diet, they do the training, and I'm like, oh my God, they look like a supermodel.
Yeah, yes. And that's what happens, is that, this awful, horrible experience that, we have to do all this work for. All of a sudden they're like, I wouldn't change a thing in my life. And I'm like, what about that thing over there? No, it made me who I am, because now I'm this, now I'm that, now I'm this. Now their brain has looked through it, pulled it apart, and gathered this strength and wisdom from it. I mean, I goosebumps. And it's like, and all of a sudden, it's not a source of pain anymore. It's a source of function.
Our source of power, because you overcame it and you healed, and you're able to see it with clear eyes and new
And this is
eyes.
so cool because it's not like you have to tell somebody, hey, that problem you had over there, that's what made you strong. That's annoying. Stop it. But it's a whole nother thing when the brain itself tells you that. When that message comes from the inside out and the brain got in there and looked at it, and it's like, oh, look at me. Actually, and look how far we come. And it starts analyzing all this stuff and starts rewriting the whole story. And then next thing you know, out your mouth, it's like, this is part of my power. This is part of who I am. And it's integrated, and it's not something anybody can take from you. And it's not something that you have to try to keep reminding yourself now and trying to create change from the outside in, and having to read enough books and having people around to give you affirmation and do all this stuff in to try to get this thing fixed. No, like now your whole brain is telling you, it's telling everyone else, in very beautiful ways. And that's really so much more beneficial. And we're not fighting against ourselves anymore because we are doing that specific work. And I'm going to tell you that for us strong people that we didn't go back there, because if we did, and this is different between high functioning people with anxiety and childhood trauma. And this is a major feature that I noticed between that, us, and the people that will have depression and go down, is that we will have this feature in here that's, nope, not going there. Nope, not going there. Nope, not going there. And people with depression are more like, they can't not go there. Their compulsion is to go in there. And what's great about the depression piece is that they will have an opportunity to heal this stuff with the right interventions. And because this stuff has to be dealt with, and they understand intuitively that they're not supposed to fight this stuff, but they don't get the benefit of creating function in their life, because that's a full-time job. And if that process is broken, it's not, you can pay attention to it all you want to, but it's not coming through. Right. So because they're paying attention to something initiates the process. Right. And so with depression, when you go down those spirals, and I have those myself, right. That will create, you can lose your energy in there. Like, it's very depleting for our systems. But right here, if you're a high functioner, you have so many tools and strategies to do this that you'll never go in there to do the work, even if you did have the tools, right? And so the work there is to really be here and see, what is it about this place right here that makes us jump out, right? Because, and then with people with depression, it's, let's hand them some tools while you're back there. Let's have you cleaning this stuff out, because they will create phenomenal, massive healing and transformation. And the high functioning individuals, where they get crap done stuff, if we can get in there, we're going to handle that. We will go through systematically and resolve everything back there. And next thing, we're like, come into my house. But that's the piece is that the high functionings of us, both with, if we don't get this stuff healed, it's very difficult to have deep, rich connection with somebody else, because we are blocked from having rich, deep, healthy connection with ourselves. And so we can't ever, so many of us end up very lonely and isolated. And then we know our relationships are not fully bonded. There's stuff in the middle there. And so then we have to be extra careful, because we don't want to rock the boat, because it could break at any time, this relationship. But it's like, once we can do this work in ourselves and really repair and integrate and strengthen our inner landscape and heal it up, instead of it being a junk pile of unresolved pain and emotion, all of a sudden it's like, there's just self-love coming out and self-connection, and then it starts to replicate itself outside of us, and we have this self-love, we have this loving new relationship outside of us, and connection, and we're able to see other people and hold space and be grounded, and other people don't have to be so perfect around us because we're afraid they're going to touch one of our wounds, and everybody just gets to relax a little bit more, because the pain can't be activated in the same way. And anyway, this is really powerful.
That was so good. And also, I just have to tell you, I feel like I don't like to show those kind of emotions, but it was so healing. Like, I feel like this huge weight was lifted off of my chest, and I feel like I had some sort of a release, like a breakthrough of some sort. And so for anybody out there listening, I know, uh, you know, a lot of us carry these things that are hidden. We don't talk about them. We don't let that out. So I know I've learned in the past that releasing yourself from shame, and shame only lives in secret, that if you talk about it, even though it's like, oh, this ugly cry, but you get the stuff out and you feel less shame, you feel better, because shame can only really live in secret.
Yeah. And I would say on that note that that what you're saying is very true. And at the same time, some people really cannot talk about it without losing a lot, without creating pain for themselves, or without creating problems for themselves. And so it's really, I want to also send the message that you never have to talk
Right.
about something to heal. You do have to pay attention to it
Yeah.
and make sure it gets through your brain's healing pathways. Some people will do that beautifully with talking.
Yes.
Some people will not. And so, and even, in these moments where we have these big cries, that's actually our body's natural healing intervention.
Mm.
And it's a wonderful intervention. You can cry yourself through all this old stuff. It does. I have done it myself before I had other interventions, and I will do it again if I ever need to, or if that's the intervention that I need. But we really do want to match that. And some of us cannot cry. We're so blocked and numb that we
Yeah,
can't.
right. I rarely ever do cry. So
Right.
that was really
Yes.
odd when I felt that. I was like,
Yeah.
oh no, I'm gonna cry. Why am I gonna cry? Why is this happening right
I know.
now? I have no control. I was biting it back and sitting here, and I was just like, I guess I am going to cry.
Yeah, because it brings, it's so beautiful. And I hope that we come to a place where it's safe to cry in our culture, that men get to cry again. Like we separate them, stop crying, boys don't cry, men don't cry, women don't cry. We're blocking us from healing. We're blocking us, separating us from our natural healing modality. And there's misconceptions that you're going to cry forever. I sit with people who cry about horrible traumas, and if it lasts 2 minutes, it's a long time. Like we have really blown that whole thing out of proportion. We're also using other interventions and things like that. And there are times when I'm looking at it, I'm like, yeah, you can cry for a day, 2 days, 3 days. I mean, that's a real thing. But for the most part, it's so healing, the work that the brain does, and it has its own wisdom. And where it's stuck, we really can help it and really overcome things that we've been carrying around for decades.
And I will say I carried, that, and a lot of other things for a while, because I felt like I was protecting my parents and the memory, and them not wanting me to say anything and go on like nothing happened. And I think that it is an important conversation. So many of you out there have experienced similar things or painful things that you're probably still not healed from because you never dealt with it. So you may not deal with it the same way I just did, but I think just awareness is part of the healing journey.
Yeah, absolutely. I know many of us are blocked because of our loyalty. And then that's the thing. Normally we're blocked because of our best characteristics, our best qualities. And it's kind of like we need to, we have to get our brain to get in there and say, hey, let's make more flexibility here. How could we be loyal and heal? How could we be loyal and address the pain that we have because of our parents? How can we do this and, honor, do all the things, because it's not an either or. It's not talking about our parents means that, we hate them and that we're mad at them and they're horrible humans. It's actually pretty much not, it's all of it. It's our parents did this and it was not helpful to us and it causes harm.
Yeah.
And maybe I hate them forever. Maybe that's the truth. And maybe I love them forever too, and maybe whatever it is. And I think that some of that has to do with owning our truth.
Yes.
Space for our truth. So many really wonderful things that is really challenging. But I have a video of this, how to blame your parents the right way so you can finally heal.
Oh, I love that. I love it. And don't you guys already like love Rachel today and be like, oh gosh, how could I have counseling with Rachel? Rachel's amazing. And you had so much great insight. It's, you know, like I said, I don't cry. It's rare. I can't even remember the last time I cried. So like you really, this was healing, revealing, and so many things. So I just want to thank you so much for just having the heart and the passion for helping others to heal from their pain and anxiety and their struggles. And where can people get a hold of your video, your coaching, and if you have any other resources for them?
Yeah, I have lots of resources. My goal is to empower people to do all their healing work. If they want to work with a therapist, they are welcome to, but they are totally able to do whatever they need to have done. And so I have a YouTube channel. I have almost 100 videos on there talking about this stuff. I have my website is really the hub where you can find everything. And I have a start here, and then there's a webinar, and then there's my Facebook group. I teach interventions in there for free so that people can access some of the top interventions in the country for working with the survival system for free. Try it themselves, see how it works. And you know, that's what I had. That's all I had. And I moved my anxiety, depression, trauma disorder into remission. So I really want to empower people with the tools. And then if people want help with how to apply the tools in a way that resolves their anxiety, depression, or trauma disorder, I have a program for that. I have an 8-week intensive that is, it's intensive. We meet twice a week for 2 hours at a time. And we use this curriculum that I developed, and I teach that, build the skills one week after the other, and we go layer by layer, working with the brain. And it's the basic brain work to get this healing pathway up and running, and to rehab it, and to get all the stuff that needs to move through that in the way that I found really works best. I've walked about 100 people through my program, and so I know that it fits the right timing. It meets people where they're at, even if they have no understanding of how to work with their brain. It's just has been a phenomenal fit. I've made that curriculum available for people who want to do the work independently, or who want to work with the therapist that they already have available. So that if you will do the exercises the way that I teach, you will notice massive shifts in your symptoms, in how you view life, in how your brain is functioning. And you know, all of this work is really to help pull that stuff out, get rid of that baggage, and then also support your brain in reestablishing in generating healthier, higher mood states, and really the good stuff that we're here for.
Right.
And that's what our nervous system is supposed to do. So we can just really get in there, and you know, there's lots of work that trauma can really recondition that. Our upbringing with our parents, really, if they weren't well, or if they didn't know themselves, they wouldn't be able to wire that stuff in for us. But the brain is ready to wire that stuff and go at any time. And so really being able to have joy and connection and security and confidence, your brain is ready for that. And so I walk people through that in my 8-week program, or that program is also available over an 8-month process for people who want to take it even slower. And and then I have an email list, and on that email list, I am sending out emails that actually are like, if this is the scenario that your symptom is showing up, this is what could be going on, and here's how you can, a way to solve that. So I really am trying to give people the power to heal themselves. And I get emails back saying, I was able to get rid of this panic attack, or I'm standing up more confidently in conflict. And I'm just, because we really can do so much for ourselves. And actually, I have another video on what your therapist can't do for you.
Oh,
And
right. I love that. Yeah.
that work that we really need to do ourselves. They cannot follow us around where we are having panic attacks, or where we're having the challenges that we're having, but we can, and we can really support ourselves very well in our brain. there to repattern, recondition, and really restore our health and wellness and be who we want to be, because that's really the end result. And that's what our
Exactly,
brain
being ourselves and not feeling like we need to hold back. I love this conversation so much. I'm like, everybody's like, sign me up, because I think that
And
it was eye-opening. And I'm sure when I listen to other people walk through their stuff and heal, it is eye-opening to me always. There's always a lesson inside for all of us. So I really just think this was a treasure today. And I just feel like I'm walking away lighter, and it was so unexpected. So I just want to thank you. And again, your website where they can get the stuff, so everybody can make sure to reach you.
Let me say that. I didn't say that yet.
I didn't think you
So
did.
my website is rachelmccloud.com, and my name is spelled like Rachelle. And so it's RACHELLEMCCLOUD.com.
And just thank you so much. And thanks everybody for listening to this episode. Let me know what spoke to you, what you resonated with, if anything helped you, and just reach out and start the conversation with us on Instagram at Sisterhood of Sweat. And what is your name on Instagram?
I'm not on Instagram.
Well, that's fine. Facebook. Probably a good thing, because everybody would be pouring their heart out to you after this. And you can reach her at our website. And I just want to thank you guys. And as always, keep on keeping on.
Yes.
Bye, everybody.